Good morning here, actually, in in this particular time zone. It's morning when I'm recording this, but of course, whenever you decide to watch/listen to this, who knows what time it'll actually be. I've actually changed my recording location. I've moved a few places. I don't know if you can tell, but my friend has a van, one of those conversion type vans, and there's a bunch of carpeted padding and stuff along the walls. So I think it actually will be an ideal place to record. We'll see how it sounds on the tail end. I am sitting next to a cracked window, so you might hear a few birds chirping, an occasional dog barking, and of course some cars passing. But it's nice out here. I'll try not to stay out here for too long because again it is still September in Texas, so it is going to get hot out here at some point in the near 10 to 15 minutes. So I'll try to keep it short, but um, yeah, I figured I'd give this a shot, and this is actually pretty interesting. It's real comfortable out here. Like this is oh my, have you ever taken your shoes off and like your feet hurt, but they hurt good as a result of you removing your shoes? Like that's how it feels out here in the van, and oh, my feet feel amazing right now. Like I'm just wiggling my toes. Completely nothing to do with what I'm here to talk about today, but just figured I'd share some context. So, today, what we're going to talk about is my thoughts on the not so new iPhone 12 and 13 series. And you might say, hey, I mean, looking at when you posted the video, which I plan on posting today, if not tomorrow. Either way, the date that the video will be posted will have been either 1 or 2 days prior to Apple's event that's supposed to be held on September 7th, I believe. And during that event, they're expected to announce the iPhone 14s. Now, I've come to the conclusion that, of course, the iPhone is embedded in American culture, and as long as iMessage is only available on the iPhone, that's a phone that I'm going to keep in my pocket. And even though I don't necessarily like that, I understand that there's only so much I can do, and I will utilize that particular platform to get that particular, well, actually, I'll utilize that particular hardware to then gain access to that particular platform to be allowed to use that particular piece of software. And of course, the software I'm talking about is iMessage, and that's that. But what's interesting about the iPhone 14 announcements that will be coming is there's no scheduled iPhone 14 mini. And I am a huge fan of smaller phones. And especially since I plan on usually carrying two phones in my pocket, if both phones are on the smaller side, I would greatly appreciate it. So I have owned the iPhone 12 mini for a little over a year now. I mean, we're getting close to a year and a half. The iPhone 13 mini and, of course, the other 13s have been out for close to a year now. And I'm considering upgrading, even though I know I'm a whole year late. But it's like, well, I'll have to weigh one, do I want to get an iPhone 14 knowing that it's not a size that I want? Two, knowing that the iPhone 13 mini or the 13 series is a year old, is it worth still getting? And three, even though my iPhone 12 mini is as old as it is now, almost 2 years old from Apple standpoint, but still just a little more than a year in my actual possession, is it worth upgrading now, paying that however many hundreds of dollars, or just keeping my iPhone 12 mini for as long as possible, and then in hopefully maybe 4 or so years, just getting whatever's more current then. So definitely a few things that I'm considering. The one thing that I didn't mention, which is kind of relevant, but only to those who actually care, the iPhone 15, so not this year, but next year's iPhone, is expected to have USB-C on it. And for me, it used to be something that I would complain about all the time, and I still want it, but what I'd want even more now is iMessage either on other platforms or Apple adopting RCS. So either one of those would be preferential, but they're not going to happen. But USB-C on the iPhone might be might be nice. So, but anyway, on to today's topic. And right now on the screen, even though I probably could turn it, there we go. Let's see. I'll do it this way and just see how it looks exactly when I actually upload it. But of course, on the left, we have the iPhone 12 mini. And on the right, we have the iPhone 13 mini. And I can already tell you right now, there aren't much differences. And usually I'd go to GSM Arena's website to get their spec or specifications on the phones. But I figure since I'm comparing apples to apples, I might as well just come directly to Apple's website. The first thing you'll notice in terms of an actual design change, camera placement. Don't think it really matters much, but I can imagine Apple said, well, we need to differentiate the 12 from the 13 to some extent. So let's go ahead and swap those cameras around. Also, it looks like the notch on the 13 is a little smaller. Don't know if that has any impact on literally anything, but again, it's another differentiator. I I wonder how much did it cost Apple to retool their equipment to make these changes, and of course to come up technically it's a different display now. Could they have just reused the iPhone 12 series displays and yeah, just put a different chip on the inside of the phone and been perfectly fine with it? Did they have to make these subtle changes, which I think are unnecessary, and they really are just for aesthetics? Not even saying that they look better, it's just, hey, physically this phone looks different. So now we can say this is a different phone. Is that important? Did it add any benefit? I don't think so. Did it cost Apple any money? If it did, had they not done it, would we been able to have gotten the iPhone 13 series at a cheaper cost? I don't know. But from a design standpoint, there are a few changes. Nothing important though. Color options are a little different, and I'm not going to go through all of those, but you can see them on the screen right now, right there, that the color options are a little different. Price, of course, right now is going to be different because one phone is a year older. And I think the iPhone 12 was released at 590. Sorry, 699. I honestly don't remember. Yeah, like that was such a long time ago. I paid $500 for mine when I got it in the spring of 2021, and of course it was released in the fall of 2020. So about six or so, between 6 and 8 months later, I actually purchased mine. And I believe the starting prices for both of these phones were the same. But because the iPhone 12 mini is a year older, now the starting price is $100 different. And that honestly doesn't matter for me, considering I don't need to buy another iPhone 12 mini, just something for you in the event that you are thinking about buying one. Apple still has them both for sale on their sites. And I do think that the 12 mini is still something worth purchasing if you find it at a good enough price. So $500 is too much. Between 4 and 5, well, I'd say between like 4 and 450 would probably be optimal. $700 for the iPhone 13 mini, I'm not going to buy it that, and I wouldn't even buy it new. Even if I could trade this iPhone in, which I could, I probably still would opt to buy the iPhone 13 used and then also sell my iPhone 12 mini. And I am a huge proponent of keeping these devices in circulation. And I know if I sold something that's as new, and I use that term loosely and put it in quotes, as the iPhone 12 series, it would probably still end up back in circulation. I don't think they'd scrap it or recycle it or whatever. But yeah, you sell these phones back to these companies. They do make the process sometimes simple, but then, they do whatever they want to do. And if they do end up reselling it, then of course they sell it for a huge markup over what they gave you for it, which is understandable. But if I'm only going to get, let's say, 300, $350 for it anyway, and I know right now Best Buy is only giving $210 or so for it. I don't remember what Apple's giving. But if I'm going to get that much for it, I'd rather give it to somebody else to use as opposed to getting that from a billion or $1 trillion company and then having them resell the phone. So starting prices right now are $100 different. In the used market, I can imagine that it's about $100 difference as well. Screen sizes are exactly the same, and the technology of it being a Super Retina XDR display for both of them, exactly the same. And hence why that change to the notch, completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. They should have just left it as is. They both are 5G phones, and of course they have the super fast 5G. Okay, whatever. Super fast is one, I don't even know if that's an actual word. In fact, I feel like it's two words. But it depends on where you are in this country. And I, in fact, turned 5G off on my phone. kills the battery. There's not an increase in performance in terms of what I needed to do, or probably what most people needed to do. So the fact that both of them were 5G phones, thanks, unnecessary, probably drove up the cost of the phone a little bit. And yeah, I ended up turning it off anyway. As you can see, the camera placement, again, a little different. They both have wide and ultra wide cameras. That top little blank right there, I believe, is for the telephoto camera, which you would end up getting on the Pro series of iPhones. Um, if you don't need a Pro, don't get a Pro. So, and in fact, most people don't, but that's my own personal opinion. But I believe that that's why they have the little blank mark right there. The cinematic mode, I'm not really recording too much stuff on my iPhone. I mean, I'm doing these voiceovers, and I have shot a few things, but I'm also not making movies when I am choosing to record using a phone's camera, which when I am even using a phone's camera, I try not to use the iPhone. But yeah, cinematic mode, fantastic. Because it's a software thing, there's no reason they couldn't have included that, or I guess ported it back to the iPhone 12, but they needed something to make the phones different. And of course, I'm sure they'd say, well, the A14 Bionic or whatever it is that's in the iPhone 12, they'll probably claim isn't capable of doing whatever it is that the cinematic mode requires. But I doubt it. And I think we'll see some we'll see like the actual specs of the cameras. And if the cameras aren't any different, then definitely don't see why cinematic mode isn't something that could have been ported backwards to older devices. Dolby Vision HDR video recording, 4K at 30 on the 12, but 4K at 60 on the 13. Great, I guess. Again, I don't use the iPhones for a lot of video recording, so if I don't have to use them, then I'm not going to. 2 times optical zoom, and here we are with the A14 versus the A15, and obviously, well, see, I can't say obviously because I'll get to that in a minute, but one phone is a year older, so you're going to have the previous chip inside. Apple always touts that their A series chips are so far ahead of whatever the competition is. So you have the Snapdragon, whatever that Qualcomm makes. Google now has their Tensors. So I don't know if there's been a ton of head-to-head comparisons between those two, between the A series chips and the Tensor chip. And Samsung has their Equinox, something along those lines. It's not really widely available here in the US, so I don't think I know I've never had one, but it's not even something that we even really talk about too much because Qualcomm and their Snapdragon whatevers are the chips in Samsung devices. So also going to, hey, with that cinematic mode, which I don't even know why I continue to bring it up, or even recording 4K at 60 versus 4K at 30, if last year's chip is so powerful, the iPhone 12, I'm confident that it could support whatever software features the iPhone 13 has. Even looking at and see how they have to, whoops, what was that? Let me just see. Okay, eBay, nothing important. But even how they had to change. So the 12 has a 6-core CPU with 2 performance and 4 efficiency cores. But you have to say, oh, well, the A15 has a new 6-core CPU with 2 performance and 4 efficiency cores. What's the actual difference? I'm sure people have ran some benchmarks. If that's something you want to go do, by all means, find another video where somebody has ran some benchmarks. But it's almost the same thing. And Apple just has to find something to differentiate them. Same thing with the GPU. We have to just slap the word new in front of the 4-core GPU. Same thing with the 16-core neural engine. I have to slap the word new in front of it. How many actual differences are there? Probably not many. Battery life is something that, yes, needs to be cataloged and I guess qualified and quantified, I guess, or quantified more so than qualified. And they definitely are just quantifying it here, not giving the actual size of the battery, which, yeah, mileage always varies from person to person. And if they were to say this is, let's say a 3,000 milliamp hour body versus a 3,200, you look at it and say, oh, well, that battery's bigger. All right, cool. And here they just say, well, you can get 15 hours of video playback. on the old phone and 17 on the new one. And when they do those type of video or battery tests for the Macs, it's usually streaming through the Apple TV app at, X brightness for, whatever. And I can imagine they probably do similar tests for the iPhone. So will you get 15 or 17 hours of video playback? It's possible. But even if you do get that, how often are you just watching your phone for that many straight or consecutive hours without doing anything in between? So all that to say, it looks like the iPhone 13 battery is a little bit larger. They both have Face ID, so that's nothing new. The ceramic shield on the front and aerospace grade aluminum, I guess, for the frame. I will say on my 12, when I got it, which it was used, there was some type of chipping going on the screen, and it wasn't the glass that was chipping. I think it was this ceramic shield coating that was chipping, which if I really wanted to, I probably could have contacted the seller on eBay and maybe got some money back. But I didn't, and that's fine. And it hasn't caused any problems, but it does look like that's something that maybe maybe it does protect the actual glass, and perhaps whatever caused that chipping to occur, if the ceramic shield coating hadn't been there, or however it's mixed into the glass, had it not been that, maybe the whole screen itself would have cracked. I don't know. But plenty of other phones that I've used don't have this ceramic shield and are perfectly fine. When it comes to water resistance, exactly the same. MagSafe, I'm not even going to get into that because I think it's a complete waste. If you are going to tell me that I need to slap something on the back of my phone to charge it, and then have a wire running from whatever it is that is now attached to the back of my phone, I should just plug it in, because you're going to get the best experience through plugging it in. It's one less accessory that I need to buy. And I think it's just overall more efficient too. So whatever, MagSafe, call it whatever it is. MagSafe on the Mac, cool. MagSafe on the iPhone, complete waste of time. Now here's where the difference is. And I think this would be a huge selling point for me. Starting storage at the iPhone 12 was 64 gigabytes, whereas on 13 was 128. So year over year, let's say I'd purchased the iPhone 13 mini back in, I think, May or April, and I had paid the same price that I paid for the 12 the previous year over year, it would have been worth it, because I paid the same amount, and at that base storage, I would have gotten double the storage. So that, for me, potentially would be a reason to upgrade, but the truth is I'm not even coming close to consuming all the storage on the device. So even though I'd want more storage, it's not something I actually need. So then I'm like, yeah, I can easily talk myself out of it. And yeah, that's what ended up happening. It's like, yeah, I don't really think I need it. So even though it'd be nice, I could have gotten 128 in the iPhone 12 series, but I didn't, and I don't need it. So do I need to get the 13 for the upgrade in storage? I don't know. Probably not. But it is nice to see Apple finally getting on board with 64 gigabytes is not enough storage in 2022 for most people. But I also know that they have their iCloud storage. So yeah, they are perfectly fine selling you a phone with lower capacity, and then also selling you a service to get you more space, because they won't sell a phone that has an SD card in it. So displays are almost identical. I mean, we're talking pixel density is the same. Screen resolution is the same. Screen size is the same. Contrast ratio, true tone, color gamut, haptic touch. It looks like the iPhone 13 gets a little brighter for typical usage, but it also looks like the peak brightness for both phones is exactly the same. Size and weight, they look to be identical. Looks like the 13 is a little bit thicker. Yeah. Also a little bit heavier. Splash and water resistance. And now we're just kind of repeating stuff. Cameras look to be identical. Deep fusion, night mode. Oh, here's one difference. So the sensor shift optical image stabilization. So for the 12 Pro cameras, definitely the Pro Max, I'm not sure about the regular 12 Pro, there was some type of sensor shift going on with the actual sensor of the camera to, I guess, help with optical image stabilization. And that was a pro level feature for that particular year. And then Apple just decided to bring it to all of the iPhone 13s. So that is something that appears to be nice if that's something that you need for your camera usage. But as I've mentioned before, I don't really record too much video on the iPhone, so don't know if it's something that I would actually benefit from. But definitely would be something nice to potentially have. True tone, portrait mode, all this other photographic styles for the iPhone 13. I believe that's where you take pictures and it makes your pictures look a little different. They don't want to call it a filter, but it's essentially, oh, these pictures are cool or warmer or whatever other words they probably use to describe them. But I think what people would use to describe them from a consumer standpoint are you have what the iPhone camera typically looks like. You have what Samsung pictures look like when taken with a Samsung phone. You have what Google Pixel photos look like when taken with a Pixel. And those are kind of the modes that I think people were trying to say, hey, these are what these photographic styles are most easily compared to. Video recording, cinematic mode, as mentioned before, 4K video up to, now up top, I remember it said 4K video up to 30 FPS for the 12, but here it's saying 60 for the 12. Let's just go back up real fast to see if I am recalling that correctly, because that's different information. All right, well, Dolby Vision HDR. Okay, so maybe that's the throwing more words in there than actually need to be there, which Dolby Vision stuff is different, so I don't want to say that it's not something, but then it's like, okay, and here it is. So I didn't scroll down far enough. My bad. So HDR video recording on the iPhone 12 mini, yes, is only up to 30 FPS, but up to 60 FPS for the 13 mini. We talked about sensor shift already, zooms, quick take videos, slow mo, looks like night mode, time lapse, stereo recording. Front cameras appear to be the same. Okay, HDR4 for photos. I don't know what the difference is, but I just imagine it's the next year's version of HDR, whatever that means. Photographic styles that we mentioned already, portrait mode, portrait lighting, cinematic mode, which we've already talked about. So yeah, nothing really different here. And of course, your usual carriers. So, as I recall, Bluetooth is the same, LTE, ultra wideband chip, spatial awareness, voice. I mean, yeah, I'm just kind of, yeah, okay. Nothing else is different. So, from what I can ascertain from what I've seen so far, let me rotate these back so we can see. Starting storage on the iPhone 13 was a little bit higher, twice, 128 as opposed to 64. But again, since I don't really use all of my storage now at the 64 gig level, do I need 128? Probably not. But for future's sake, if I do plan on keeping this phone for 3 or 4 more years, it might be worth upgrading that storage now and just having it in the event that I need it. Maybe. Sensor shift stuff and I'll just broadly say stuff with the cameras slightly different. Nothing that I think that would drastically impact my usage of the phone. A slightly bigger battery. Okay, maybe. And speaking of batteries, potentially getting a phone that's a year newer today could mean 1 year later in terms of me needing to change my battery. And I only even bring that up because in the past, I would just swap the battery out myself. But because of the way Apple has locked stuff down through software, I can't do it. And that's just the easiest way to put it. I've changed plenty of batteries in my life, and Apple doesn't want the user doing it themselves unless you go through them directly. And at that point, I might just say, well, screw it. I'm just going to get a different phone. Yeah. And that might be the honest truth. I mean, that's not how it should be because a battery is something that's going to degrade over time. So having to pay whatever Apple charges, which I'm sure isn't too much, but it's more than what I've paid. I'd say it should be like a $15 part. I should be able to swap it out myself and move on with life the same way that I would change a battery, like in this van that I'm sitting in any of my Android devices, my laptops that are not Macs. So the television remote, like so many things have batteries in them that the user can just swap out themselves, and Apple just doesn't want the user doing it themselves. So yeah, getting a phone that's a year newer with a battery that's a year newer might also be worth it. Um, and I really think that's it. Yeah, so more base storage, bigger battery slash newer battery, um, different camera features. Technically, if we're talking future, one more year of support, the overall length of support for both phones is probably going to be the same, but having a newer phone would mean a year later uh, in terms of support. So that's something to consider. And the last thing I'll say, because I remember I hinted at it, but then I kind of just went a different direction when I was saying, oh, the previous year has, of course, the previous chip, blah, 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 blah. So the A14 versus the A15. So when the iPhone 14 comes out this year, the Pro phones are going to have the newer chip, but the regular phones are going to have the same chip on them as the iPhone 13 series. So I am truly curious. What is that going to mean in terms of support? So in, let's say, 5 years, when the iPhone 13 is reaching end of life, if the iPhone 14 has the exact same chip in it, is Apple going to end of life that base iPhone 14 as well? Yeah, and I guess that's just the easiest way to, like, is the iPhone 13 going to get an extra year support, or is the iPhone 14 going to get killed off a year sooner than its Pro variants? We'll find out, and that's sure something else that I'll talk about whenever the iPhone 14s are officially announced, released, whatever. But definitely something that I'm thinking about. That, hey, they frequently say, oh, we can't support something because the hardware, blah 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 blah. But the hardware is the same, and the main thing that we're concerned about is the SoC. If they're the same, why is the length of support any different? And I guess I don't want to say length. Why are they terminated at different times, or why is the end of life any different? So, all that to say, I'm probably not going to get the iPhone 13 mini. I mean, I say that, but and I probably mean it. When it comes to Android devices, I feel like all Android phones bring or offer something different. As far as I'm concerned, an iPhone is an iPhone. As of right now, I have, I think, 3 or 4 different Android phones, and they all serve different purposes. I have one iPhone, and that one iPhone serves one purpose, and that's all that I needed to do. And really 2 purposes: phone calls, iMessage. That's pretty much it. Um, so yeah, I definitely will think about it. But, I think for me and for most people, if you already have an iPhone 12, there's probably no reason to upgrade. I am going to be excited to see what Apple releases or announces for the iPhone 14 event that's happening in 2 or 3 days. But yeah, all signs are pointing to the fact that there is not going to be an iPhone 14 mini. So yeah, I'll be a little disappointed to see that. But it is what it is. And yeah, that'll be all for this one.